Radiant heat floors are an option that our clients get particularly passionate about. And we love passionate clients. We also love to deliver on that passion. However, over the past 20 years building custom homes, we've learned some things from clients that have radiant heat floors that I want to take a few minutes to share with you, so you'll have this knowledge if you decide to go with radiant heat floors. Hi, I'm Andrew Genatasio. I'm one of the owners of GTG Builders, and this is another video in our series talking about all things custom home building and renovations. So if you haven't yet, subscribe down below, hit the bell so you get a notice when our weekly videos come out, and hopefully if you're into thinking about building custom homes, if you're thinking about renovating, doing an addition, there'll be a lot of good information in these videos for you. So quick disclaimer when we talk about radiant heat floors. My feedback that I've received over the past 20 years is all based upon projects here in central New Jersey. And some of this feedback would be different if you were in the Midwest, the Northeast, or the Southeast. Keep that in mind as I tell you some of the things that we're going to talk about in the next few minutes. First of all, let's talk about what radiant heat floors are. So major heating systems here in New Jersey, we have baseboard heat, we have forced hot air, and we have radiant. Radiant is a system by which we warm the floor of the home, and then that heat rises and warms the space above it. Radiant heat floors can be the primary heat source in your home, and it is reported to be very comfortable most of the time. So let's talk about the different types of radiant heat floors. This is not as important as whether you would like radiant heat floors or not, but when you talk about radiant heat floors, you're going to hear people talk about different kinds. So I'll give you just a little bit of information so you're aware of what they're talking about. First of all, we have stapled down hydronic floors. Hydronic refers to the fact that we're using a liquid circulated through pipes to generate the heat, to transfer the heat from those pipes to the floors. So stapled down hydronic is the fact that we build your subfloor of your home, and then we attach in one way or another these tubes that carry a hot liquid, and then we put your finished floor over it. So we're stapling down to your house's subfloor. The next option would be hydronic staple up, and that's very similar, except that we go down, imagine us going down into the basement of your home, and we staple those tubes up to the underside of your subfloor. There's some pros and cons to each one, and we could talk about that in a different video, but both of those systems function in the same way, that we use a liquid pushed through pipes to transfer the heat to your floors, and then that heat is then transferred into the room. Third type of radiant floor is electric. And electric radiant heat is something that we would use if we were doing a small area like a master bathroom, for example, or a master shower. We would heat that tile floor with an electric system instead of a hydronic system. A hydronic system, the basis of it is a little more costly, but it's designed to do an entire structure or a single floor, a larger area. Makes financial sense when you're doing those larger areas. So now let's talk about 6 things that we hear over and over again in regards to radiant floors. Maybe these will be things that interest you, and you're welcome to put comments or questions down below, and we'll get right back to you. So, number 1 is comfort. Radiant heat floors tend to be more comfortable than the other heating options. The fact that we're warming the floor, your feet are on that floor, you're feeling the heat from the bottom up, warm air rises, and it's consistent temperature is comfortable for a living environment. The fact that most of us have had forced air or hot water baseboard. We know that that comes on and off. Temperatures can change slightly. There can be warm spots and cold spots if a system is not done just right. So we've all had that level of discomfort. One room may be a little warmer or colder than another. Radiant heat tends to be more constant and more comfortable than the other types of systems. Number two, question I get very often is, can I use hardwood over a radiant heat system? And the answer is yes. There's a lot of data out there about what types of floors are most efficient to use with radiant. So as you can imagine, a poured concrete system with a radiant heat in it holds heat longer than hardwood floors because of the density. There's a lot of information out there about that. But the fact is we can safely use hardwood over radiant heat systems and create a very comfortable environment. So the third thing we hear most often from clients and get into long conversations is, what about air conditioning? So an air conditioning system is a forced air system. And if you want radiant heat, it means we're going to have two totally distinct systems in your home. We're going to have a forced air system for air conditioning, and we're going to have that radiant heat system for heat. So that is two completely different systems in your home. If we have forced air as our primary heat, we will just have that forced air system for heat and air conditioning. That's a little bit different than we normally do here in central New Jersey, but the fact is radiant heat will be your primary heat source, and then air conditioning will be a forced air system to provide air conditioning to your home. Number four is related to number three in the fact that here in central New Jersey we have fairly cold winters, but we tend to have very cold days or very cold blocks of days in that winter. So our average temperature may be 30, but there's certainly weeks that we go down to 5, 10, or 0 degrees, and then have high winds, and that can cause some real challenges for your radiant heat system, because earlier we talked, radiant heat is constant. It always wants to keep that house constant. As the outside temperatures change quickly, a radiant heat system can lag and take a little while to catch up and to provide enough heat. And in every heating system, regardless of the type, there is a minimum and a maximum design calculation. So if that temperature drops below 0 and you have a really windy day, your radiant heat system may not be designed to keep up with it. So here at GTG Builders, we normally recommend that since we're putting in that forced air system for air conditioning, we also install a backup heating system in that forced air to only act as a barrier to extremely cold days. The fifth point is just the opposite. Here in New Jersey, where our average temperature in a winter day may be 30, we may have 3-5 days in a row of 45-degree weather in the middle of winter. And since your radiant floor system again is trying to stay constant, that floor will stay warm even though the house starts to get warm. It will manage itself through the thermostat, but we have clients that tell us kind of jokingly that when it does pop up and get warm real quick overnight, they have to open the doors or open a window and let some of that heat out until that radiant heat floor cools down, and then it takes back over. So that is something to consider if you live in a place that's very windy, or you just live in a microclimate that your area tends to be very cold or get very warm. You'll want to consider having a backup system in place to manage that. So the sixth and final point I want to make about radiant heat floors is a little bit about a forced air system. Although some people don't like the forced air system, it does offer one benefit, and that is using a forced air system, we can help manage the air quality in a home. And so when we do a forced air system, we always have a filtration system to filter out dust and other particulates that are floating in the air. We can increase that filtration system if you have a family member that has allergies. We can do ultraviolet, we can do electronic, we can do a lot of things depending on what your needs are using a forced air system to manage air quality. We can also use a system to push moisture into your air. So in the winter, when your heat runs, we can put moisture in the air so your home doesn't dry out, your skin doesn't dry out, you don't get cracks, the floor doesn't shrink. All those things happen in the winter because the air is so dry outside. We can put in a system that puts moisture back into the air, and we can manage that. So without a forced air system, we lose the ability to do some of those things. Here in New Jersey, as I said earlier, even though we have a radiant heat floor, we're going to have a backup AC system, which is forced air, and that will include a backup heat system, and if our clients choose to, an upgraded system that helps manage air quality, whether it be moisture or dust. So those are the 6 things that we hear back from clients all the time. I hope that the topics that we covered today were helpful. If so, be sure to subscribe and leave us a comment. If you disagree with something if you have radiant heat floors at home and you disagree with something I've said, let me know. There's a lot of opinions on radiant heat, and I'd love to learn more from you if you want to leave a comment down below.